Holz is a Rotarian from Cambodia. He was born in Wisconsin, grew up in Colorado, and now works for a nonprofit in Cambodia. And he's going to describe a little bit about how he got there and his nonprofit. He lives in Cambodia with his wife and 3 children. Greg Holz.
Well, good afternoon. As I'm speaking, if you want, I've left informational material on all the tables, brochures, as well as our most recent project and vision report, including our last year's financial report, if any of you are interested in that. As Peter said, I was born in Wisconsin, grew up in Colorado. I then went to college in Minnesota, over at Concordia University in St. Paul. I had a degree in community outreach, and straight out of college, I decided I was going to go to Cambodia, where I would teach English or do whatever. Actually, I wanted to go to Thailand. They asked me, I signed up with the Lutheran World Mission. They asked me, do you want to work with an existing project? Do you want to start a new project? And I said, I'm not good at working with other people's things. I like starting new things. And they said, well, we have nothing new to do in Thailand, but there's a spot in Cambodia that they've asked for. And I thought I'd go there for a year or two. I then met a Cambodian girl, married her, and realized I was stuck there. Just off the bat, our organization is a faith-based organization. I went out there as a missionary straight out of college. I've worked with different organizations for many years, and upon meeting several homeless families and getting involved with them, it was a leap out on faith to actually start a project to serve the street children of Battambang, where I live. Just real quick, this is my family. Everyone always asks about them. We have been in the U.S. for about 6 weeks now. We actually head back on Wednesday. That's my wife, Sinoon, my son, Richard, my daughter, Julianne, and my baby daughter, Elena, and that's my sister, Adrian. We took this picture at Elena's baptism just a couple weeks ago. So they are with me. This is a grand adventure for my children. Most people try to assume that I'm on vacation whilst in the U.S. That's not true. I'm constantly traveling, fundraising, and my children are not in school, which means I am have to watch them as well. So I am ready to go back to Cambodia and actually take a vacation. Just a little bit about Cambodia. It's pretty much on the opposite side of the planet. If you don't know anything about it, it's sandwiched in between Thailand and Vietnam, just south of China. It is exactly 12 hours time difference from here. So it is almost 1 o'clock here, right? Which means it's almost 1 a.m. there. We are located in this little dot up on the northwest of the country. It's a city called Battambang. Most people have heard of Phnom Penh, which is the capital, or Siem Reap, which is where the big temples are for the tourists to go to. Most people don't realize it, but Battambang is actually the 2nd largest city in Cambodia, but it's not a big tourist hub. Its main business is agriculture. It's where all the rice mills are. Most of the rice and agricultural products of the country are sent through Battambang. And Cambodia is known for 2 things. First off, it's known for these temples. Temples are called Angkor, the largest of which is called Angkor Wat. It's about 1,000 years old. It is the largest religious structure in the world today. It is a point of pride for Cambodians. If you go to Cambodia, it's almost insulting to them not to go see it. The other thing which Cambodia is known for is a period from 1975 to 1979, which they referred to as the Killing Fields. The communists, led by a man named Pol Pot, they called themselves the Khmer Rouge. They were responsible for the deaths of some 2 million people over the course of 3 years and 8 months. What happened was they took over the country towards the end of the Vietnam War. They evacuated all the cities under the pretense that the U.S. was going to bomb Cambodia. They sent everyone into the countrysides. They made everyone leave everything behind, forced them all into communal living situations, separated everybody, took away all their possessions, and started purging the country of all the people that they did not want as a part of the country. All the educated class, everyone who was associated with the old government, old soldiers, members of the police. At one point, it got so bad that they actually started looking for people who had glasses. They believed that was a sign of education. They would take these people, send them off to secret prisons. There was a network of hundreds of prisons across the country where most of them would be interrogated, tortured, and executed. prisons were judged efficient by how many confessions they could get from their prisoners. So the more confessions you got, the better your rating was, the less likely you were to be singled out by the government for further scrutiny. They killed off hundreds of thousands of people, and when you get rid of all the educated people and everyone who knows how to run a country, the country basically went into complete collapse. Their infrastructure fell apart. They had no medical knowledge of how to treat disease or illness or manage a lot of these massive labor projects that they were attempting, and people began dying of starvation, disease, overwork, malnutrition by the scores. And like I said, some 2 million people died in that short period of time. That was out of a starting population of 7 million in 1975. So that was more than a quarter of their population that was wiped out by its own government. In 1979, Vietnam invaded Cambodia. They pushed the Khmer Rouge back to the jungles. The Khmer Rouge continued to fight a civil war until about the late 90s. And so as a result, Cambodia today is considered one of the poorest countries in the world. I dare say this is probably an average street in Cambodia. I mean, you get into the cities, you'll see nice buildings, nice roads, but if you get out into the edges of town or out into the villages, most people will live in single-room houses, maybe 2 rooms, multiple generations of a single family in that house, grandparents, parents, children, maybe an aunt and uncle, and they may or may not have an external bathroom to use. I think the average salary in Cambodia is currently around $100 a month. So most families will pool those resources together to get by. But at the bottom of society there are street children and homeless families. Now, in Cambodia, there is a belief in reincarnation, the belief that if you are a good person in this life, in the next life you will have a better station. If you are a bad person, you will have a worse station. And the general attitude of most people in Cambodia is that street children are destined to be street children because they were horrible people in their previous lives. This is what they deserve, and there is little to no motivation to do anything to change that. Most people treat street children like vermin. They ignore them, they spit on them, they try and shoo them away. Our organization works with these street children, and on the one hand, we get a free hand to work with them because we are dealing with a problem no one else wants to deal with. However, frequently when I go to work, talk to government officials or people within the country, we get ridiculed for wasting our time and money on these children. But basically what happened was about 6 years ago, I was working at a church called Transform Asia Church, and I was just told, make something happen. It was an empty building, and as a good Lutheran, I decided I was going to do Holy Week services, because that was something I grew up with. That was a tradition I really liked as a child, the Maundy Thursday, the Good Friday, and I invited everybody I knew. And one day, a gal from Youth with a Mission shows up at our church and brings in all these homeless families and asks, Greg, is there anything you guys can do for them? And I thought about it, and it just felt like we were supposed to do something. So I started a children's program. But well, as I got to learn about these kids, I started to find out where they come from. They come from the sidewalks, abandoned buildings. Most of the kids that we currently work with come from this. This is the abandoned railroad station in Battambang. You can see they sleep on these tables above flooded areas down below. A lot of the families come from sleeping on the sidewalks. Street families seek out the most undesirable places to live, basically because they know they will not be forced to leave them anytime soon. About 5 years ago, one day I went out to meet a lot of these families on the street, on the sidewalk, and what I found were these big bonfires burning. What happened was the police one day showed up and said, you need to get out of here, you have till the end of the day to go. Whatever the families couldn't pick up and move by the end of the day, the police pushed into large piles and just set on fire and chased all the families away. As I said, they look for the most undesirable places to live. And so when I met these kids, what we did is we started a day program out of this church. We went out a couple days a week. We just found whatever kids were willing to come in, and we brought them in. We would feed them, clean them up, let them spend time with us there. I originally started the program with about 5 kids. As they got to know me, that became a dozen kids, and I ended up hiring this gal. Her name is Sokli. I hired her to work with the children to help me run the program, and when she came on board, it kind of exploded to about 30 children every day that we'd go out, and we were doing this 3-4 days a week eventually. You know, the kids got excited about taking baths. I mean, you've never seen children so excited about using soap and clean water. You know, I think my children are an anomaly in that they like taking baths. I've seen my nephews here in the US, and they hate taking baths. They fight it. These kids, they see clean water, and they have no inhibitions. They strip down and go jump in it and get clean as fast as they can. One other thing we started to realize was that these children, because of the cultural bias towards them, they are always on edge. They are always afraid. When they would come into the church program that we were running, the younger kids especially, some of them would just sit down on the floor and fall over and go to sleep. They were coming into a safe space. They knew that no one was going to hurt them. They could let their guards down and they would fall asleep. And we'd just line them up on the platform at the front of the church. You know, sometimes we'd have 10 kids just sleeping there because they felt safe enough to sleep for once. These kids usually are sleeping on the sidewalks or, like I said, in these abandoned buildings. Many of them stay up until about 1 or 2 a.m. at night begging for money. When they're done begging, they go to sleep. I had once had one boy who was sleeping on the sidewalk. A drunk person tripped over him, started to beat him, and he fled. First place he came was actually to the church, to our program, where our program was, because that was the only safe place he could think of. And as we got to know these kids, this girl in particular, her name is Nga, and as we got to know them, she stood out. She had dropped out of the first grade in just 2 years that I'd known her. She dropped out of the first grade 3 times in those 2 years. We started to realize these kids wanted to go to school. Their families wanted them to go to school, but because their families are dealing with the problems homeless people the world over have, be it alcoholism, drug addiction, social mobility, the families were not doing the jobs families should do. Things we take for granted, like someone to wake the kids up in the morning, someone to make sure clothes are clean, someone to make sure homework is done. And what caused them to drop out most often was no one was calling the school to get absences excused. When the kids were sick, no one was calling the school to tell them. So Sokley and I had this idea that we were going to start putting these kids in school. And we used Nga as our model, so to speak. We created this program around her. And we wanted to start it within Transformation, the organization we worked for at the time. And they said, no, we want to focus on youth and English classes out of our facilities. We actually talked to a whole bunch of other organizations. We had this idea. We were going to spend a little bit more money and focus more energy on each kid to try and keep them in school longer. And you know, in global charity, there's a general attitude of people want the most bang for their buck. You know, most sponsorship programs revolve around $1 a day, $30 a month. And people were asking us, why do we wanted to spend $100 per month per child? Why can't we do 3 kids for that? You know, we got a lot of pushback on that. And eventually we just kind of got fed up with people telling us we couldn't do it that way and decided we're just going to take a leap out on faith and start our own program. So Sokley and I did that. We started Crossing Cambodia in 2013. And the way we run our program is every day we go out at 6 a.m. to the streets with our staff and we find the kids. We find where they're sleeping. We pick them up. Sometimes we drag them out of bed. We put them in our truck or our tuk-tuk and we take them to our center. Once there, we feed them, we clean them up, we get them ready for school. We actually pay the tuition for them to attend private schools. Because of the cultural bias against them, there's overcrowding in public schools in Cambodia and a lot of other issues with teacher corruption. And so when you have an unruly child that wants to leave the class, most teachers will say good riddance. So we actually pay to put them in private schools where there's limits on class sizes so as to try and get them that extra attention that they need to succeed in school. So like I said, we then enroll them in school. Every day they come back for lunch. We have staff. Our kids are all in small groups of about 5 kids. Every 5 kids has a full-time staff person assigned to them as an advocate to be like the big brother, big sister, and do the family jobs that need to be done. They not only wake the kids up and feed them, they check their homework. They tutor the kids. We provide English classes and after-school activities for the kids. So we get them at 6 a.m. and we typically keep them till about 4 p.m. when we have to take them back to be with their families. You know, I get a lot of questions about why don't we just house the kids or why don't we provide living space for the kids? There is actually so many issues with orphanages in Cambodia right now. It has been estimated that something like 75% of all the children living in orphanages in Cambodia are not actual orphans. Most of them have parents or family that could be caring for them. And so the government has cracked down on abuse of orphanages, on setting up orphanages, and who can go into orphanages to the point where they say, unless you are a true orphan with both parents dead, you cannot go into an orphanage. They don't care what the family situation or the home situation is. They say the kids have to stay with their families. And so that's what we do. We get them early in the morning, we take them back to their families in the evening. And in the daytime, we are doing our best to provide that stability for them, to care for them, to feed them, and get them through school. Well, when we started in 2013, we started with 5 kids, and we got those 5 kids through a year of school. People started to notice there were physical differences in the kids. They started to realize these kids were there was a chance for these kids to succeed in school. And suddenly families started asking us all over the place, can our kid join? Can my kid join? Will you take my child? We started an application process. We actually had a grant from a foundation out in California. For a few years, we were running a preschool project. So from our first year, we went from 5 kids to the next year, we went to 20 kids with 10 preschoolers and 10 sponsored children in school. This coming year, we are sponsoring 27 children total. We will have 24 of them sponsored to go to school and 3 preschoolers that we'll be caring for out of our facility. And we do that Monday through Friday. And just to kind of show you that girl Nga that I showed you earlier, this is a more recent picture of her. You know, she was 6 when I met her. She's now 13. She is just finished the 4th grade, going into 5th grade. So August 15th is when the next school year starts. She continues to do well. And one of the awesome things that we see in this program is that by serving these kids, we also see how it affects their families. These parents who have been beaten down by society, who have no one who believes in them, start to have hope. We start to see the parents taking better care of themselves. Nga's mother, even though she still begs for money, part of the time she works cleaning dishes for a vendor by the roadside, part of the time she begs for money, and she saves everything she collects to rent a small room for her and her daughter to sleep in instead of staying on the sidewalk like they used to. Little by little, we are seeing changes in these children and their families. You know, this is last year, our kids that we put in school. Like I said, we have 27 that we're going to do this year. Just to kind of give credit to my staff and volunteers in Cambodia, everywhere I go, people say, thank you, Greg, for what you're doing. And to be honest, I just have the privilege of being the guy who stands up in front of everyone and tells them about it and asks for money. In reality, Sok Lee does 90% of the actual work. But you know, we tried to get her a visa to come visit the U.S. this year. She was denied. I'd love for her to come and see everything here. But she does the vast majority of the work. She hires the staff, she manages them, she talks to the schools, she coordinates everything, buys the food, pretty much everything. You know, those are our 4 advocates we have right now. We're actually looking to hire another one for this coming school year. We have several volunteers involved with us. The gal on the far left, or far right, far left from your perspective, is Paulina. She and her husband live in Cambodia. Bronson's a teacher with a different organization, but Paulina handles all our administration, basically if you make a donation, she'll be the one who sends you the tax receipt. I was doing that for a long time with the help of an accountant in Texas, and she has completely taken that over, which is a huge relief to me because I hate accounting. The fella in the middle, his name is Chris. He's a Canadian. His whole job is making use of our facility in our off hours. You know, we go from 6 to 4 o'clock on weekdays, but on evenings and weekends we have nothing. So he currently runs English classes. His whole job is community outreach to the local community around us. Not only do we want to reach these street kids and their families, we're working to try and build goodwill with the community around us to help them understand our purpose, to build, like I said, want them to understand why we bring these street kids in. We want them to appreciate that our center is there, not just for these kids, but for them as well. So he currently runs English classes in the evenings out of our center. Oops. And then also the other lady, her name is Izzy. She coordinates all of our volunteers that come throughout the year, handling all the logistics of setting up guest houses and homestays and making sure they're fed and don't die on me. The other project, which I'm currently working very hard on, and if, you know, I talked to Mary a little bit, that's sponsorship. Just a little bit more detail on that. costs us $100 per month per child, and that covers pretty much everything: tuition, meals, transportation, school supplies, part of the salary for their advocate, as well as the administrative costs. In the coming school year, to run our facility, that is including rent, utilities, school tuition, everything, it's going to cost us about $3,000 a month. And that's, like I said, that's providing the primary care for 27 children. Our other program, and I have talked to a few people about this because we're looking at possibly pursuing a global grant to try and set this up, is a farm project. Now, the idea behind the farm project is as these kids get older, a lot of them want to drop out of school to go find work. Well, the job prospects for a 12-year-old that's only been through 3rd or 4th grade are not great. We want to make a compromise with them. If they go to school in the mornings, we will provide them a work opportunity in the afternoons. And so we currently have a plot of land, about 8 acres, that we have agreed to lease. We have a 15-year lease on it with an option to buy if we can ever get the money to buy the land. And we pay like $200 a year to lease this property. And so we are developing a farm on there. We just recently hired someone to be our farmer. We're looking for someone to be our project manager. We want to grow food. The idea being, these kids will have the job. They'll be able to learn about job skills, develop their own work ethic. They will hopefully, be able to take food home to their families as well. The food that we grow will then go back to feed the other children in our program, hopefully bringing down our food budget. And then if we are able to sell anything from the farm, we hopefully will be able to earn revenue to support the organization. One of our long-term goals is that over the next 10 years, we want 50% of all the funding for our organization to be sourced locally within Cambodia. This is because one of my personal long-term goals is to work myself out of a job. We want it to the point where Crossing Cambodia does not depend on me for the funding to keep running our organization. If I drop off the map, we want everything to keep going without missing a beat. And so we are working on the farm as a social enterprise to earn income. We are working on developing local fundraising techniques. We are hoping to develop an endowment eventually to continue funding our organization long term. And we are also looking for other volunteers, people who can help us with communications, better managing our sponsorship program, better communicating with people who can help us manage and run the farm. So if any of you knows a farmer, by the way, that would love to give me some advice, I would much appreciate it. I am an avid gardener, and that's my home garden right there. But scaling up to 8 acres is a different beast altogether. So I've been visiting farmers nonstop on this trip. I've been back 6 weeks, and I've probably seen about 10 different farmers asking their advice on what the heck am I doing. But that's the basics of our organization and what we do. As I said, our long-term goal is to get these kids at least through high school. We make a commitment to every child when they come into our program. We tell them, as long as you follow our rules and agree to come here, we are not going to kick you out. If they fail their grade, we keep them in school. Our goal is to get them at least through high school. We've only been doing this a little over 4 years, so we have maybe 8 more years before we get to college. We would love to put a kid in college someday, but I am committed to getting these kids at least through the 12th grade or into a job training program if they are not able to make it that far. If any of you would like further information about our organization, we produce an annual magazine. I have those just outside the door there. That's a suggested donation, $15, because it costs us about $10 to print each one of those. We have copies of that from 2015 and 2016. End of this year, we'll have another magazine coming out. It provides all sorts of information about what volunteers do, how the children have developed over the years, how the differences in when we first met them versus now. But again, also, if any of you would like to make a donation, I can also give you an electronic receipt via PayPal. Or otherwise, you will get one in the mail from our accountant, Paulina. I guess I would like to open it up to questions if any of you have questions about what we do in Cambodia. Yes?
By the time you get these kids through high school, you have about 4 times as many kids as you have now. How are you looking forward to doing that?
Actually, yeah, that's a good point. It's something I forgot about to mention. Our current facility, we've decided the cap on how many kids we will have in one facility is 25 children. That's not because we can't handle any more than that, but because we've decided that the family aspect of our center is very important to the success of these children. You know, the bigger you get, the easier it is for kids to slip through the cracks. And we've made it our mission that we're looking for the kids that slip through other people's cracks. The fact that every kid knows every other kid in our program, that every staff person knows the name of every child in our program is a very important part of our program. So our current facility, our cap is 25 children. We actually would like to, if we can get the money to buy or build a facility out at the farm, we'd like to move out there. Once we get that kind of stabilized, we've talked about we want to open a second facility and reproduce what we're doing. So we will not take more than 25 kids in a single center, but if we can build a second center eventually, we would take another 25 children in that regard. Yes?
Is Cambodia still a communist country?
It is not. It is technically a democracy, although the government that was installed by the Vietnamese, they became a political party and have basically been controlling the country ever since the 1980s. So they can, whether people actually like them or not, they're winning the elections. They're in control. It's openly democracy, although there are pieces of communism still there. Addresses are not done by street addresses, they're done by villages and communes in Cambodia. So, my address in Cambodia is a house number, then my village, then my commune, then my district, etc. So it still kind of has those remnants of communism, but it is not formally communist anymore. In fact, most Cambodian people were so sick of communism after the Khmer Rouge and the Vietnamese occupation that, that they don't want anything to do with it. Yes?
Do you speak Cambodian, Greg, or is English a common language there? Or?
I do speak Cambodian. It's called Khmer. The language is called Khmer. My wife did not speak any English when I first met her. And so I, started dating her after about 4 months in Cambodia. And I learned enough Khmer that by about 10, 11 months, I could propose to her. I had a teacher in high school who once told me, Greg, if you want to learn a foreign language, move to another country and find a girl who doesn't speak English. And I thought he was nuts until it actually happened. So I learned it pretty quick, though. Yeah. Although there is a lot of English spoken in Cambodia, it's a common language in the schools, largely because tourism is such a big industry in Cambodia.
So it's a relatively safe country now?
Yes, it is a very safe country. They try very hard to take care of foreigners and tourists because they want to encourage more people to come. Violent crime is not a major issue there. And in fact, there used to be an issue with landmines in the country, an unexploded ordnance. They have actually gotten so good at it that when I first went out there, the rate was something like over 300 people per year were having landmine accidents, and it's down to less than a dozen per year now in Cambodia. And the military is so good at it that African nations are actually contracting the Cambodian military to do their demining. Yes?
Good, so I see from the brochure that headquartered in Maun?
Yes, well, our P.O. box is in Maun. We don't have an official physical office anywhere. We used to have a P.O. box in Texas where our accountant was, and then we switched everything up, and I got one in Maun because my sister lives out there, and this is Minnesota is a frequent travel stop for me, so it's easy for me to pick up documents when I come through here.
Plenty of time for more questions.
You mentioned you're a nonprofit. Are you nonprofit in the U.S. or in Cambodia or both?
Both. We are set up as a 501c3 here in the U.S. We have a board of directors. We can give tax receipts for all donations that are made to us. We are registered as a non-governmental organization in Cambodia. However, the legal complications make it such that technically in Cambodia and the U.S. we are two separate organizations with a close association, even though we operate as basically one organization.
Yes, are your students all at the same school? And is the school supportive of these kids in this special circumstances?
Yes, they are all in the same school. In fact, the children from our program are in the same school where I send my own children to school. When we first started the program, we were in a different school, and what happened was after a couple of years, even though it was a private school, we started experiencing some of those same problems that we saw in the public schools. The teachers were actually ignoring our kids. There was a lot of bullying issues with wealthy kids kind of bullying our kids, and the teachers were not only ignoring it, but they were failing to inform us of these issues, and so the kids were having behavioral problems, and everyone was just kind of letting it go. We think maybe because they wanted us to just take the kids out of the school, or they wanted an excuse to kick the kids out of the school. I'm actually friends with the gal who runs the school we go to now. It's called Panyasastra School, and she has been very supportive of our program to the point where they actually give us a 40% discount on the regular school tuition so that we can afford to go to that school, because it's a much better private school than the one where we were. And her family actually donates half our uniforms every year for the school, for the children. Yes?
A few years ago, I traveled to Vietnam and Cambodia and went on a boat from Cambodia into Cambodia. We mostly stayed around Phnom Penh. My question is, are these street children mostly in your area where you are working, or around Phnom Penh too?
There are street children all over Cambodia. There's street children in Phnom Penh, there's street children in Siem Reap, which is the major tourist city. Part of why we do our program in Battambang is because we're not on the beaten path. Most of the larger organizations that work with homeless families, like Friends International, they're based in Phnom Penh, they have an office in Siem Reap, but they have not established anything in Battambang. And there are literally hundreds of street children in Battambang that are being unserved. And that's a big part of why we started our project, because when I first met these homeless families, we couldn't find anybody else to help serve them. There was no other church groups, no one else was doing anything with them. Not only because of the cultural bias, but because it requires a lot of extra resources and an awful lot of patience to work with homeless families. These people, it takes a very long time for them to trust you. It takes a very long time before they start to get on board with your program. And so a lot of people will start trying to work with homeless families and kind of give up because of the frustration of it all. Yes?
Is the tradition of the country largely Buddhist, or because of communists, is it non-religious? Or?
Officially it is Buddhist, although there's a very good book called Spirit Worlds, which is written about Cambodian religion, because whilst on the surface it's Buddhist, underneath you have this collection of folk religion, local beliefs, pieces of Hinduism coming from the ancient temples, because the ancient temples of Angkor were Hindu temples originally. And you have all this kind of built into one. So it's a very complicated religion in a lot of ways. And you can call it Buddhism largely because that's what they call themselves, and you can identify the monks in the saffron robes. So. Yes?
Greg, how do you deal with that cultural challenge of that these kids deserve their place in life to a certain extent? I mean, when you're talking about the challenges you have with the school, that's got to be pretty challenging to overcome. How do you
for me, it's largely a matter of faith. I believe that all people God created everyone equal, and I therefore must treat everyone equally. It also, I think, comes from my personal background. As a kid, I have ADHD, and as a kid, I struggled an awful lot in school, and I had a lot of people who wrote me off as a stupid kid, because I never did my homework. And I had a math teacher that just didn't believe in ADHD at all, and she basically wrote me off, kicked me out of the math class, the advanced math class, even though I could do it. And in high school and in college, it took a lot of extra attention from the support systems there to get me through school. And so to a certain extent, I can identify with these kids. Like, these kids there's nothing essentially wrong with them. They've had a bad hand dealt to them, but they just need a little extra help. They need a little extra attention, and they can do the same things everyone else does. And so that's why we try to spend more money per child, and we commit to having a close staff-to-child ratio of 5 kids per 1 staff person.
Time for one more. Here.
Any estimate of the percentage of the population that is
kids homeless? I mean, how big is that?
Trying to think. The most recent figure I was able to find is from Friends International, and they had an estimate that 1 in 11 people in the major cities is homeless. I forget what that translates to of the overall population, but at least for the cities, that's something like 9% is considered homeless. Yeah.
We've got some time to stay up and answer some of those questions.
Yeah, I'll be around I'll just hang out in the hall by my magazines, and I will be here until no one else wants to talk to me anymore. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much.